Hey YouTube, Maestro here with Bendu Lightsaber Combat. Welcome to the Djem Knights level series of videos. The first thing we're going to be talking about today is vulnerabilities. One of the core fundamental aspects of Djem is that it's about creating or exploiting any vulnerabilities in the opponent. So what vulnerabilities exactly are we talking about? What are the vulnerabilities that we can exploit in any opponent? There are a lot, but they generally fall into just a couple of categories, and we're going to go over what those are and how we define them now in just a moment. Okay, before we define those vulnerabilities, I just want to talk a little bit about Djem and what it's all about with regards to lightsaber dueling. Okay, Djem, of course, follows a fundamental formula that we've detailed in other videos. But following that fundamental formula is what makes Djem Djem. If we did anything else, it wouldn't be Djem, it would be something else. One of the key factors in that, one of the key fundamental aspects of it, is in creating and exploiting vulnerabilities in the opponent. One of the ways that an opponent can be vulnerable is, and one of the broadest, is that they can have any kind of imbalance. This is one of the easiest to both exploit and to recognize. This doesn't just mean that they're out of balance physically, like balancing on one foot or falling over or tripping. No. This is much broader than that. It's talking about any imbalance in the being that you're fighting, whether it's their physical balance point, whether it's the balance in their tactics, a balance in their mentality, in their fighting modes, whether they favor certain attacks over other attacks. An imbalance of any kind is usually very easy to spot and exploit. We're trained as human beings to notice any sort of imbalances and to have that bother us on an instinctual level, because that's one of the ways in which our primal survival instinct manifests. You notice something is off, something is not quite right about the way that guy's looking at you. There's some sort of imbalance there, and so you avoid that person and avoid injury or danger. This fruit looks different than all these other fruits, and I know all these other fruits are good, so this different one, I don't want it. There's spots on that apple. I don't want that apple. This is a fundamental instinctual level predilection that we have as human beings. And so this makes any sort of imbalance in an opponent something that's very easy to see. If someone's moving in a relaxed, smooth way, it's very easy to tell. If someone's moving in a jerky, spasmodic way, that also very easy for our eye and senses to detect. And so that makes any sort of imbalance in the opponent the easiest and the broadest to identify. Once you've identified an imbalance, how do you exploit it? There are a couple of different ways, a myriad of different ways. Keep an eye out for future videos where we'll actually be doing techniques that are designed to exploit any imbalances in the opponent. But with the Djem being as physically domineering as it is, one of the easiest ways is to apply energy into the opponent at that point of imbalance. And your added energy in that moment of imbalance can be just enough to tip that person over into complete free fall. All right, what's another vulnerability that we can identify and exploit? Any immobility in the opponent. The nature of fighting requires us to be very mobile. Generally, it's a bad idea to stay in one place and not move in a fight, to try to hold your ground, so to speak, in the type of fighting that we're doing. In a tactical sense, holding your ground is sometimes necessary and very good idea. But in an individual bout, movement, mobility is important. And immobility doesn't refer necessarily to the decision not to move. It's about the inability to move in whatever direction, to some limitation on the opponent's mobility. Maybe he's got a bad knee and he can't turn left very quickly. A great way to exploit something like that would be to force him to turn left constantly, pushing on that weakness until, something gives out. Not a very nice thing to do, but an overwhelmingly powerful thing to do, so very in keeping with the Djem So. All right, let's look at another one. One of the other things that we can look at, a vulnerability that we can exploit, is distance. Distance differentiates itself from immobility and imbalance by it differentiates from these two. It differentiates from these two because it's talking about where the opponent is positioning themselves. It's not talking necessarily, not only talking about I'm X amount of feet or inches away from the other person. That's one aspect of distance, but that's not the only way. That's a very literal translation of distance. Distance is any type of positioning. So think of distance as positioning. Distance is not only how far away you are or how close, but also where in regards to the opponent's central line. Are you behind them? Are you on their live side or their dead side? Are you above them, below them? That sort of thing. Distance can determine a lot about a fight. The positioning that you have, that you put yourself in, or that the opponent chooses to put themselves in, can be a big vulnerability. And the way that you exploit that is by applying any sort of tactic or technique that's going to cause that positioning to work against them rather than for them. For example, one good example of positioning is what I was just talking about: live side, dead side. For those of you that aren't aware, when you're in a fighting position, you have a live side. In this case, with the way that I'm standing now, right foot forward, my left side here is my live side. My power goes wherever my hips are pointing, mostly. So anything standing in this area right here, it's going to get rocked. It's going to suffer the full force of my strength and power brought to bear right on it. It's in my zone. It's in my live side. Now, what if it was standing over here? That's my dead side. It's very hard for me to punch over there. It's very hard for me to affect things that are standing outside of the shoulder line, that direction, on my right side. So I have a live side and I have a dead side. If the opponent forgets this, they're showing a deficiency or weakness in distance. Maybe they're turning wrong and they're putting you on their dead side. Maybe with just a quick step you can get to their dead side and push that vulnerability that they have. Okay, so these are some of the examples of vulnerabilities that can be present in the opponent that can be the result of deficiency in the opponent's technique, circumstance, or they can be purposefully organized and orchestrated by you, the Djem So specialist. Either way, Djem So is all about creating and exploiting those vulnerabilities.